Today on Comicstorian, we get introduced to the newest Spider-Man 2099 villain. This is the Comicstorian channel where I take some of your favorite trade paperbacks and single issues and I break them down into digestible bites. I cut out all the fluff and the additional subplots so that you can get the bare bones synopsis and know what is going on in the world of comic books. The purpose of this is to allow you to be up to date on your favorite books, but still be able to buy the comic book at your local comic book store or at your digital retailer. Or you can just jump in the next issue because you know what's happening. All alterations to the panels, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. Today we're going to be covering some new Spider-Man 2099 storylines, and to let you know where we last left off, Spider-Man was lost in an interdimensional portal where he fought a god known as Thanatos, a god that apparently almost defeated Thor in a previous fight. In order to get away from this god, the Prophet of Thor teleported both Spider-Man and himself to Spider-Man's apartment, and we'll find out what's going on with that in a moment. But we're going to start the storyline back at the Alchemax building, the evil corporation that Spider-Man has been fighting, as that is where all of this went down, as they try to explain to their boss what actually just happened. It's a little bit of a filler issue, but you need it for full context. And then we're going to be doing 2099 Unlimited #1, which introduces a new villain. And I'll explain why we chose there to leave our cliffhanger on at the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoy. Let's get into it. Back at Alchemax, Tyler Stone is in a rage over his security, losing the stranger that had come through the portal. "What do you want from us? We had him on lockdown!" But then he started using this nutso power. The guard shouts, and Stone looks away, his eyes narrowing. "That seems to be all the rage these days." He orders the guard to continue his report, and they explain that the stranger had managed to slip away. Running through the halls, they cornered him, opening fire on their weapons, but he seemed to warp the air around them, dispersing the blaster bolts. He looked just as surprised as we were, finishing as he explains that the stranger leaped through the portal and punched him in the face. Stone nods, turning to the next tactician, who explains what happened next. He came charging back into the portal room, shouting for Spider-Man. He pushed all of the scientists aside and leapt through the portal into the unknown dimension. Nothing happened at first, but the scientists became afraid when an evil-looking face appeared in the portal. "Kill the power!" they shouted. "Shut it down!" A massive arm began to come through, and the room was filled with laughter. The portal shut down, and the laughter became screams, and the arm was severed and left on the floor. "And Spider-Man and the newcomer, they never made it back from the other dimension?" Stone asks. Both the scientists shake their heads as Dana comes rushing into the room, demanding to know where Miguel is, believing that he must be worried sick. "Miguel isn't here," Tyler tells her with a sigh. Meanwhile, back at Miguel's apartment, at the end of their adventure through the other dimension, they appeared in Miguel's apartment, and the stranger is now laying back on the couch, apologizing for bleeding all over it. "We really should get you to a dock in a box, but that'll just send a red flare up to Alchemax." And he holds up a heat sealer, promising that it'll work as long as he doesn't mind the smell of burning flesh and searing pain. "Stop yammering and do it!" The stranger snaps, gritting his teeth, with Miguel being shocked that the stranger didn't make a sound. He then shouts for Lila to boot up a medical journal on wounds, but there's no answer from his hollow assistant. "What's your name?" he finally asks the stranger, and the man pauses for a second before realizing he doesn't know his own name. Meanwhile, downtown, Gabe, Miguel's brother, enters the apartment of his girlfriend/anti-corporate freedom fighter, Casey. He's shocked to find her sick, being taken care of by one of her crewmates. "What's wrong with her?" Gabe asks Raph, the man glaring at him. "I'll give you a hint. She's dizzy, tired, and vomiting, and you're responsible for her condition." Gabe stares at her in shock before having a sit-down. Back in Miguel's apartment, the stranger is staring at the strange technology around him, shocked that Miguel is using all of this so casually. They talk for a few moments, with Spider-Man finally removing his mask and revealing his face to the man. "My name's Miguel O'Hara. Mind telling me what happened?" So the stranger nods, explaining that he broke free and rushed to the portal. "Broke free how?" The stranger then shows his strange powers. "I don't fully understand them. I had other powers once, but somehow they've changed." He explains that he managed to find Miguel in the portal, and when he sensed that Thanatos was coming after them, he managed to warp them to where Miguel felt the safest. Short time later, Miguel is digging through his closet, commenting that he doesn't think the stranger should leave the apartment. "Appreciate that, but my wound is sealed and I'm no longer in pain. I want to explore your new world." Miguel is surprised to see Lila is active, waiting for him when he comes out of the bedroom, and he tells her to leave a message for Dana, telling her that everything is okay. Afterwards, he turns to the one that Lila notes the news hollows are calling the Net Prophet. He's not even aware that something happened to Lila in our last video. "Okay, anywhere in peculiar that you want to see?" Miguel asks the stranger, And the prophet thinks about it for a moment. The best of it and the worst of it. The scales must be balanced. Miguel thinks for a moment, and the prophet asks if he knows where he wants to go first. He reaches out, grasping Miguel's wrist, and a strange light wraps around the both of them. "Think about it, and we will be there!" he shouts, with Miguel shouting in surprise as they both disappear. Back at Casey's apartment, Gabe sits by her side, promising that he'd be happy to marry her. "Where did that come from?" "Well, I figured the baby should have two parents," he explains, and Casey stares at him for a moment before she begins to laugh. But Raph glares at him. "She's not pregnant, you moron! She got a concussion from where your bullet bounced off her skull." Gabe looks at her, feeling stupid, before he finally agrees to take her to the doctor. Meanwhile, Miguel and the prophet appear at the top of stark Fujikawa Tower, the highest point in the city. They look over it, with Miguel demanding to know about Thanatos, Thor's greatest villain, supposedly. The prophet nods and explains that there was a great battle between heroes and villains, and though he doesn't remember where or when, he remembers there being a flash of white, and then he can remember nothing else. He looks over the city, a tear rolling down his cheek, as he tells Miguel that he believes he had a child once, a daughter. "But she's long gone now," he whispers, when finally he asks Miguel to show him where the city's desperate are. At St. Patrick's Cathedral in downtown, some of the local thugs are beginning to break in, wishing to steal the stores of food that the priest keeps for the hungry. They push past her, slapping her across the face as she tells them that they need to beg God for forgiveness for their actions. The leader steps up to the cross, throwing his hands up, shouting to the sky, "Come on, God! This is Ugun of Fenris talking here in your house. Go ahead, take your best shot!" But then there's a bright light, and suddenly the prophet and Spider-Man stand before them. Well. I planned to come here and apologize to the good father for all the trouble I've caused. Now it looks like I can make amends fairly quickly, Spider-Man says as he steps forward. He leaps at the thugs, quickly throwing the leader through a window as he webs up the other members of the gang. He then turns back to the priest as he drags him out the door. "Pardon me, Father. I'm going to take these sinners out into the light. Maybe they'll repent," he says with a salute, and she nods from the floor. "Hope springs eternal, son. However, if they continue to harbor thoughts of hostility, kick their shocking faces in." Outside, Spider-Man throws the gang members away, and he stands before the leader before whirling on the rest of them. "I'll give you a fair warning. Keep your meat hooks off this place, or what I did to you this time will be a walk in the park. Understand?" The leader begins to argue, but Spider-Man grabs him and threatens him with his talons. "I said, understand!" Yes, sir!" The leader finally gulps as Spider-Man swings to a nearby rooftop after he's done. It's there that he finds the prophet waiting for him, and the prophet thanks Spider-Man for his help, but believes that he should now see the world through his own eyes. "Go in peace, Spider-Man," he says as he opens up a portal, stepping through it. You too, Spider-Man whispers as he shakes his head in surprise. A little while later, over at Coop Memorial Hospital, two parents park their car, heading inside as they discuss their son's diabetes issues. But inside, they find the hospital in turmoil. Nurses running around shouting for someone to call the public eye. Parents rush up to their son's floor, shocked to discover that everyone on the floor is dead. And they rush towards his room to find a man leaning over his body, apologizing for having to kill him. "In the end, this will be better for us, for all of us, for the survival of humanity," the man promises as he breaks the boy's neck, looking up at the parents. "I sincerely hope that this was your only scion." He then turns, leaping out the window. Weeks later, Spider-Man is leaping around, beating up several thugs. The alleyway is suddenly bathed in light as several public eyes hover nearby, ordering everyone to freeze. They don't waste a moment before they open fire, rounds bouncing off the concrete buildings as Spider-Man leaps away, swinging through the city. "I try to play Good Samaritan, and this is the thanks I get," he thinks to himself as he finally arrives at Alchemax. Once again, he questions why he even bothers acting as Spider-Man in a city that shows Spider-Man no gratitude. He breaks through one of the office vents and quickly leaps into the lab before he hits the ground with the door buzzing, and he quickly changes into his civilian clothes. The door opens to reveal a beautiful woman. "Hey, hotshot, you ready?" "For?" And she smiles, reminding him that they had lunch plans. "Why are you breathing so heavy?" And Miguel smiles back at her. "Anna, have you looked in the mirror lately?" They head down to the building commissary and quickly catch up with Anna's sister, Carrie, who has been diagnosed with a rare genetic deformity. She tells him that she is planning on visiting her tonight. "Want me to tag along?" Miguel asks her. Surprised, she happily agrees. That evening, Gerald Bernardson continues to look through the genetic data of several creatures. Memories of how he was once on the fast track in genetic research fill his mind, but his career was put on hold when his daughter was afflicted with a mysterious illness and died. The world still thought that he was brilliant as he became obsessed with finding out what killed his daughter. But his obsession became shameful when he discovered that it was a flaw in his own DNA that had killed his daughter. His quest for genetic purity became his only thought. His wife left him, not being able to cope with the man that her husband would become. But Gerald knew that once he became pure, he could return to the human race. That's what caused him to create his serum, to begin his quest. And with that, he injected himself, pulling on his uniform, and he once again became the Mutagen, his mind filled with possible evolutionary adaptations that his body could become. He leaped out the window, out into the city, but as his body adapts, he begins to glide through the air. The gene pool has become tainted. It is time for another cleansing, he says as he flies off into the night. Meanwhile, Miguel and Anna have arrived at the hospital, quickly making their way to Carrie's room. She smiles at them, introducing herself and flirting with Miguel. He holds up a hollow book that he bought for her, and Carrie smiles as she asks if he wants to curl up with her and watch it. Down the hallway, the guards open up a room door to discover Mutagen standing over the body of a dead patient, and Mutagen launches himself at them, promising that their struggles will lead to his body adapting more. Truly, that which doesn't kill me makes me stronger, he shouts as he shrugs off a blaster bolt and keeps moving. Miguel and the girls look up in surprise as the noise reaches them in Carrie's room. He heads to the door, telling the girls to take cover while he goes and sees what's happening, and he heads into the hallway, surprised to find the guards rushing towards a far room. What kind of threat could justify shooting up an entire hospital? He wonders to himself, and he looks up just in time to see a guard come sailing out of the room, slamming hard into the wall. Miguel turns, slipping into a janitor's closet. I hope there's no cameras in here, because it looks like more than the grunts can handle. Mutagen comes out of the room, his body already having grown taller and stronger as he throws the guards around. No matter how I'm attacked, my body develops the right defenses. A pity my formula is already fading. He slips into another room, finding a woman who cowers in fear, and he apologizes to her as he briefly checks her charts. Degenerative nerve disease. I hope you understand the reasons for what I must do, he tells her, but Spider-Man leaps into the room, punching Mutagen hard in the chin, slamming him into the wall. He turns to the woman, yelling for her to run. Knock that clown down. That should end it, he thinks to himself, but his eyes widen in shock as Mutagen comes back through the wall, quills now coming out of his chin, protecting him. Your attack has merely resulted in a hyper-adaptation. I doubt you'll punch me in the jaw again. He leaps at the wall crawler, trying to punch him. I have no quarrel with you, but if you try to stop my mission, you will pay. Spider-Man dodges the blows, kicking him into another wall, demanding to know what mission involves killing people at a hospital. But Mutagen comes back, his skin hardened to another attack. Why do you fight me? You are obviously superior genetic stock. They trade blows back and forth again, with Mutagen explaining that he is trying to erase genetic defects that medical science has been keeping around by healing people. The very survival of humanity is at stake, he shouts as he kicks Spider-Man through a window, sending him out into the night air. A pity, such superior DNA to be splattered on the pavement, he says as he shakes his head, but Spider-Man comes swinging back in through the window and kicks Mutagen in the chest. This guy is evolving right before my eyes. I'll have to take him down quickly. And Mutagen smiles. You lived! I am pleased. Plus, I've experienced such an array of adaptations from you. Spider-Man then hits him with the webbing and rushes towards the window, hoping that the terminal velocity of the fall will take care of Mutagen. But Mutagen quickly adapts to this, slicing through the webbing with brand new claws. Now that the webbing won't stick to his skin, Spider-Man's attacks are having no effect, and Mutagen lashes out, sending Spider-Man through another wall and back into Carrie's room. Mutagen steps through the wall, holding up Carrie's medical chart, realizing that she also has a rare genetic disease. No! Spider-Man shouts as he leaps at the man, his fists having no effect, but Mutagen merely backhands him, sending him across the room. Don't you see? I've already adapted to you. You are no longer a threat to me. Spidey leaps back in, grabbing Carrie, pulling her clear of the water that is pooled in the room from the busted pipes in the wall that he broke through. He then shoots out his webbing, dragging a piece of medical equipment into the puddle, sending a shock through Mutagen. But Spider-Man's eyes widen in shock again as Mutagen struggles back to his feet, his legs now insulated. An inspired effort, Spider-Man, though I thought I'd die from that one. but my body adapted just in time. Spider-Man glares down at him, questioning why he should have the right to decide who lives or dies. I will leave you to your victory while I go plan my own, he shouts with Spider-Man rushing to the window, but Mutagen is already gone. I guess we're okay. For now. Until he returns, Spider-Man thinks to himself. And there you have it. Now, there is a reason we chose to do this cliffhanger right here. It's because Spider-Man 2099 is getting weird. So if you don't know what happened, is Spider-Man 2099 proved to be popular. So what Marvel decided to start doing was crossing Spider-Man 2099 over with everything else happening in 2099 as a way to boost the sales of 2099. And then introduce more world-building elements in 2099 that were intended to be resolved later. So 2099 Unlimited is apparently an anthology series of books where they introduced Hulk 2099 as a backup to Spider-Man fighting against Mutagen. So for the first 3 issues, Spider-Man 2099 is in Unlimited 2099, but Mutagen kind of disappears for issue 2 to show back up for issue 3, then we go back to normal Spider-Man 2099. On top of that, you're probably wondering, what about that god guy, Thanatos? What's going to happen to him? He doesn't get resolved in 2099. Peter David, the writer of the book, ended up resolving him in a crossover that came out in the 2000s, and it did involve Miguel. So once we get through all of the existing Spider-Man 2099 issues, we're then going to do a Marvel crossover with Spider-Man 2099 where they resolve the Thanatos plot. I know. It's confusing, but it's 90s comics, man. So I decided to leave our cliffhanger today with the first defeat of Mutagen so that next time we can show you how he handles Mutagen fully and move into the next actual Spider-Man 2099 plot. It's all over the place, and it honestly took me and the guys like 3 hours to figure all of this out, because if you look at 2099 Unlimited, it promotes the Hulk, but if you read the volume that it's included in, they don't include the Hulk, so we couldn't find the Hulk or figure out why the Hulk was being promoted or where Thanatos was, and had to do like deep dive research. So we did a lot. This is what we have for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you want to see where the storyline keeps going, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, hit that notification bell, and join us next week right here at Spider-Man 2099.